The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Arrival at Misselthwaite Manor. As the carriage approached Misselthwaite Manor, the air grew crisp and cool, carrying the scent of heather and the distant sea. Mary Lennox, her face pale and expressionless, peered out the window, taking in the vast moorland that surrounded the manor. The sky, heavy with clouds, cast a somber light on the landscape, making it seem as if the sun rarely visited this place. When the carriage came to a halt, Mary stepped out, her eyes widening at the sight before her. Misselthwaite Manor loomed large, its stone walls weathered by time and shrouded in ivy. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the entrance hall, where a grand staircase, its oak banister worn smooth by generations of hands, led upward into shadows. "It's a big, drafty old place, Mrs. Medlock," the housekeeper said, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "You'll need to bundle up, especially when wandering the moor. It can be treacherous." Mary's eyes narrowed as she studied the woman. "Why would I go wandering on the moor?" she asked, her voice tinged with disdain. Mrs. Medlock's face softened for a moment as she recalled her own childhood adventures on the moor. "It has a way of calling to you," she said quietly. "And Misselthwaite Manor has its secrets too. You'll discover them in time." Mary's curiosity piqued despite herself. She followed Mrs. Medlock through the manor, their footsteps tapping on the stone floors. The manor was filled with the echoes of absent occupants, their laughter and conversations lingering in the air like ghosts. As they passed a window, Mary paused, transfixed by the moor stretching beyond. The wind whispered through the heather, carrying the distant, mournful cry of a bird. She shivered, feeling a strange sense of foreboding. This place was so different from India, with its vibrant colors and bustling servants. Here, the landscape seemed to swallow her whole, making her feel small and insignificant. Her room, with its tapestries and four-poster bed, offered little comfort. She ran her fingers over the intricate needlework of the tapestries, imagining the forest scenes coming alive at night when the fire cast dancing shadows on the walls. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Can I come in?" Come in." Martha, the young housemaid, poked her head in, her cheeks flushed from the kitchen's warmth. "I've brought your supper, miss." Mary's response was curt. "I'm not hungry." Undeterred, Martha bustled into the room, a tray of food in her hands. "You might not be, but you need to eat anyway. It's a long journey from India, and you look like you could use some meat on your bones." Mary's gaze flickered to the tray, her stomach growling in response to the savory aroma. She felt a twinge of guilt for snapping at Martha earlier. "Thank you, Martha," she said, her voice softening. Martha's face lit up at the small courtesy. "You're welcome, miss. Now, I know it might seem gloomy now, but just wait till spring. The moor transforms into a sea of purple heather and yellow gorse. My brother Dickon, he spends most of his time out there. He's got away with animals, he has. They say he can charm the birds right out of the sky." Mary's interest was piqued, and she found herself imagining Dickon running across the moor, surrounded by a flock of birds. "What about now?" she asked. "Is there anything interesting out there now?" Martha's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Well, there's the old oak tree, as ancient as the manor itself. Some say it holds the spirit of the moor. And on quiet nights you can hear it whispering secrets to the wind." Mary's gaze returned to the window, her curiosity battling with her reluctance to venture out into the cold. "I suppose I could take a walk tomorrow," she said slowly. "I'll show you around the manor first," Martha offered. "There's plenty to explore, and who knows, you might even stumble upon a secret or two." As Martha left, Mary felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Despite the manor's gloom and the moor's vastness, she sensed that this place held the promise of something more. An adventure, a mystery, or perhaps simply a chance to belong. With a yawn, she climbed into bed, the whispers of the moor lulling her to sleep. The secret garden unveiled. Mary Lennox, feeling a newfound sense of purpose, spent her days tending to the neglected garden. With each passing day, the garden began to transform under her care. The robin, her constant companion, watched as she worked diligently, clearing away weeds and debris. Mary had become a fixture in the garden, her hands growing rough from the soil, her face flushed with the brisk air and exertion. One afternoon, as she rested on a stone bench, she heard footsteps approaching. It was Martha, carrying a basket filled with packets of flower seeds and new gardening tools. "These are from Dickon," Martha said with a smile. "He thought you might like these to help with the garden." Mary's eyes lit up at the sight of the seeds. "Thank you, Martha. And please thank Dickon for me," she replied, eager to begin planting. Together they planned where each seed would go, imagining the colors and fragrances that would soon fill the air. As the days turned into weeks, the garden showed signs of life. Tiny shoots broke through the soil and the once barren branches began to bud. Mary felt a sense of pride and joy at the sight of the new growth. She knew that, with time and care, the garden would bloom once again, a hidden oasis of beauty and tranquility. Nurturing connections. Mary's loneliness dissipated as she roamed the corridors of Misselthwaite Manor, each room whispering secrets of the past. The manor, with its tapestries and portraits, seemed to watch her with 1,000 eyes, yet it was the outdoors that called to her with a voice as clear as the Yorkshire air. It was in the garden that Mary met Ben Weatherstaff. His initial brusqueness was like the Yorkshire weather, harsh but honest. As Mary's determination to revive the garden grew, so did a bond between them. "You've got a bit of green in your heart, I can tell," Ben remarked one day, a glint of approval in his eyes. The transition from Ben to Dickon was like stepping from shadow into sunlight. Dickon's presence was a melody that even the robins paused to hear. His communion with nature was a dance, and Mary, a willing participant, found herself twirling along. "Nature's got a lot to say if you're willing to listen," Dickon shared, a smile playing on his lips. The garden became a canvas for their friendship, painted with the hues of blooming flowers and the laughter of newfound companionship. Mary's hands, once hesitant, now moved with purpose, tending to the earth as if it were a precious treasure. The day Dickon spoke of Colin, Mary felt a stir within her, a mix of empathy and intrigue. "He's got a mind full of questions, always wanting to learn," Dickon said, his eyes sparkling with affection. Mary's curiosity was piqued. She wanted to meet this boy who shared her thirst for knowledge. Dickon noticed her interest and nodded. "I think you'd get along with him, Mary. Would you like to meet him?" Mary's heart skipped a beat as she agreed, trying to sound casual despite the excitement building within her. When Dickon came to fetch her, Mary followed him to the part of the manor where Colin lived. Her nervousness was tempered by Dickon's reassuring presence. As they entered Colin's room, Mary was struck by how pale and thin he looked. But his eyes sparkled with curiosity as he looked at her. "This is Mary," Dickon said by way of introduction. "She's been helping me with the garden." Colin's eyes lit up. "I've heard about the garden. I've always wanted to see it." Mary's heart went out to him. She knew what it was like to feel trapped and lonely. "I can take you there," she said, trying to sound confident. "If you'd like, that is." Colin's face lit up with excitement. "Really? You'd do that for me?" Mary nodded. "Of course. I'd like to show you the garden." As they talked, Mary realized that Colin was not as different from her as she had thought. They both felt like outsiders, trapped in their own ways. But with Dickon's help, Mary had found a way to escape her loneliness. Maybe, just maybe, she could help Colin do the same. Note: I have revised the chapter according to the instructions provided, adding more details to Mary's experiences and emotions. clarifying the transition between Mary meeting Ben Weatherstaff and Dickon, removing repetitive sentences, and considering adding more tension or conflict to the meeting between Mary and Colin. Unlocking potential. As Mary and Dickon approached Colin's room, the anticipation was palpable. Upon entering, they found Colin eager and ready for the adventure that awaited him. Without hesitation, he joined them on the journey to the secret garden, a place he had only imagined in his dreams. The moment the garden's gate swung open, Colin was struck by the sheer life force within. His eyes, wide with wonder, took in every detail, the way the light danced upon the leaves, the chorus of birdsong, and the delicate fragrance of blooms mingling in the air. It was a sensory feast, and for the first time, Colin felt a stirring of something deep within him. With each step, Colin's skepticism melted into genuine curiosity. He reached out, touching the petals and leaves, his fingers tracing their intricate patterns. The garden's vitality seemed to flow into him, igniting a spark of vitality he hadn't known he possessed. Dickon watched with a knowing smile as Colin tentatively planted a rose, his hands no longer hesitant but confident and sure. The act was simple yet profound, marking the beginning of Colin's transformation. The afternoon waned, but the garden's enchantment only grew. Colin declared his intention to return to be a part of the garden's continual blossoming. It was a promise to the garden and to himself, a promise to rediscover himself, to let the garden's magic seep into his very being, and to emerge anew. As they left the garden, Colin's steps were lighter, his eyes brighter, and his heart filled with a sense of possibility. The secret garden had unlocked something within him, and he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Standing ground. The morning sun streamed through the high windows of Misselthwaite Manor, casting a warm glow on the walls of Colin's room. Mary entered quietly, her eyes reflecting the secret of the garden she and Dickon had been nurturing. She approached Colin's bedside and found him gazing thoughtfully at the ceiling. "Colin," Mary began, her voice carrying in a note of invitation. "It's such a beautiful day. Won't you come outside with me?" Colin's gaze shifted towards her, a flicker of interest in his eyes. "Why should I?" he asked, his tone more curious than defiant. Mary smiled, sensing the change in him. "Because there's something special waiting for you," she replied. "The garden is blooming and it's full of life, just like you." Colin considered her words, the resistance fading from his expression. "Perhaps I will," he said, a hint of eagerness creeping into his voice. "I'd like to see this garden of yours." Mary's smile widened as she watched Colin's transformation unfold. "Then let's go," she said, offering her hand. "Let's discover the magic together." And with that, Colin rose from his bed, his heart open to the wonders that awaited him beyond the walls of his room. A new chapter was beginning for both him and Mary, one filled with the promise of joy and the beauty of the living world. Together they stepped out into the corridor, their footsteps echoing softly. The manor seemed to hold its breath as they passed, as if it too anticipated the healing that was to come. They reached the garden door, and with a gentle push it swung open. The sight that greeted them was one of vibrant colors and life. Birds sang from the branches, and the air was rich with the scent of blooming flowers. Colin's eyes widened in wonder, and a laugh bubbled up from his chest, a sound so pure and joyful that it seemed to chase away the last shadows of his old self. Hand in hand, Mary and Colin stepped into the garden, leaving the confines of the manor behind. It was a moment of triumph, not just for Colin, but for all who had nurtured him and the secret garden back to life. Discovery and joy. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting a golden glow over Misselthwaite Manor as Mary, Dickon, and Colin approached the hidden entrance to the secret garden. Dickon nodded, his eyes bright with anticipation. It's time. The garden's been waiting for Colin." Colin looked up at the walls that had kept the garden a secret for so long. "Will it be as grand as you've described?" he asked. Mary pushed open the hidden door and they rolled Colin through. Inside, the garden was alive with sounds of evening. Dickon sat down on the grass, his eyes never leaving the scene before him. "It's a magical place, isn't it?" he said. As they sat there, the sun dipped lower in the sky. Colin looked up at Mary and Dickon. "I never knew anything could be so beautiful," he said. Mary smiled and took his hand. "There's so much more to see," she said. "We'll show you all the secrets of the garden." As they explored the garden together, Colin's laughter echoed through the trees, mingling with the sounds around them. It was a moment of pure joy, one that would stay with them forever. Magic and friendship. The morning sun bathed the room in a warm, golden light as Mary and Colin stood, their eyes taking in the grandeur of Misselthwaite Manor's long-forgotten rooms. Ivory elephants with intricate carvings and raised trunks filled a cabinet, silent witnesses to the past. Mary's excitement bubbled over as she pointed them out to Colin. "They must have been part of your mother's collection from India. Just imagine the stories they could tell." Colin wheeled closer, his curiosity piqued. He ran his fingers gently over the smooth surface of an elephant, marveling at the intricate details. "I never knew these existed. It's like discovering a hidden part of her, a piece of the puzzle I never got to know." As they continued their exploration, they entered the picture gallery, where stern-looking ancestors stared down at them from gilded frames. But it was a different portrait that captured Colin's heart. The painting of his mother, her eyes sparkling with laughter, her face alive with mirth. "She looks so happy," he whispered, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "It's as if her laughter is still echoing through these halls." Mary nodded, feeling a connection to this woman she had never met. "She is still here, Colin. In you, in this house, and in the garden we've brought back to life." They moved on to the rose-colored brocade boudoir, where a mouse had left its mark on a cushion, adding a touch of whimsy to the room. The manor whispered stories of its past, each object holding a memory. As they delved deeper into the manor's secrets, Dickon joined them, his presence a welcome addition to their trio. "You two have done something extraordinary," he said, his voice warm with admiration. "Not just with the garden, but with these rooms. You brought them back to life." Colin turned to Mary, his eyes shining with a newfound light. "It's not just the rooms that have awakened," he said softly, his voice steady. "I feel like I've been asleep all this time, shut away from the world. But now I'm awake, and I'm part of something so much bigger than myself." Mary squeezed his hand, her smile reaching her eyes. "You always were, Colin. You just needed to see it for yourself. And now, there's no stopping us." Their laughter and voices filled the manor, blending with the echoes of the past to create a symphony of life. The magic of friendship had woven its spell, and as they gazed out at the blooming gardens, they knew this was just the beginning. Together they would continue to explore, to discover, and to create new memories within the ancient walls of Misselthwaite Manor. A new beginning. The late afternoon sun bathed Misselthwaite Manor in a golden light as Archibald Craven entered the drawing room. The room, adorned with autumnal hues and lilies, exuded a warmth that had long been missing. Colin, his son, stood there, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Archibald's laughter rang out joyful and unrestrained as he embraced his son. "Colin, my boy, just look at you," he exclaimed, his voice thick with emotion. Colin's words tumbled out in a rush. "Dickon and Mary, father. They showed me there's so much to discover beyond my room. I'm going to explore every inch of it." Mary, watching from the doorway, wore a soft smile. Witness to Colin's transformation, she now observed the rebirth of his father's hope. The sun sank lower, casting long shadows. Archibald turned to Mary, his gratitude evident. "You, Mary, have played a part in this miracle. We've all changed. It's as if we've been brought back to life." Mary stepped forward, her voice steady and confident. "The garden has taught me that life holds endless possibilities, Mr. Craven. It's shown us all that we can overcome our challenges." Archibald's eyes held a newfound softness as he regarded Mary, seeing the once timid girl transformed. "Indeed, Mary, and for that, I am forever in your debt."